We are,
Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and tonight on Hercules and the Space Gods, I'm proud to bring you URANTIA book with the one and only Nick Curto. Greetings, Nick. How are you?
thank you, Hercules, for that very wonderful introduction. I am fine here in New York City. I think we're hitting almost 100 degrees. Uh, Boy, it is really roasting out there. I don't advise anybody to take the subway tonight or tomorrow because it is really roasting out there. But again, here we are. It's New York City and it's July, so here we go.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to tonight's show. As always, if you need me, just holler.
Thank you very much, Hercules. Always a pleasure. And hello, I'm Nick Curto. I am a Urantia book longtime reader, and I have always, even as a child, very much been interested in religion, in Jesus' journey, what he was saying. I was brought up Roman Catholic. One of my father's sisters was a nun, a sister superior in the Our Ladies of Mount Carmel Church in Springfield, Massachusetts. And for a long time, I really thought around 17, 18, I considered being a priest, but I decided that there were other passions I had that I wanted to explore. So I did put that aside, and I was the president of the Newman Club in college, and then came directly to New York City. And one of the reasons I came here, not only for my design artistic career, and also a theater, but I really wanted to explore other religions, other spiritual callings. That meant a lot to me, and I was very fortunate here in New York City to really have the opportunity. And I found myself in the Unitarian Church, the All Souls Unitarian Church on the Upper East Side. And I went in there, and they were reading from very different kinds of books. That's what they did on Sundays. And I thought, this is a great way to educate myself. And I was there for about 2 years. Every Sunday that I was in New York City, I was there for the service. And after 2 years, one Sunday morning, the minister said, and now for our last reading, we are going to read from the Urantia book. And I thought, I have no idea. I've never heard that very funny word, Urantia, Urantia book. I thought maybe it was Eastern Indian or something like that. So the minister read a few paragraphs, and I honestly was holding my breath because it seemed to me as though that was the book I'd been looking for all my life. It just totally took me by storm. And I thought, boy, do I have to find out more about that book. Anyhow, I remembered the name Urantia. I went home, wrote it down, and then I was luckily finding readers of the book and a study group here in New York City with the very wonderful couple, Robin and Helene Jorgensen, in the Soho area. And I was there for many, many years on Tuesday nights. And it was such a wonderful experience, expansion experience, and I thank God for that opportunity. They're still dear friends of mine, and I've been reading the book ever since. And I am the current chair of the outreach committee of the Urantia Society of Greater New York, a wonderful group of people. So anyhow, that's the short version of me. And my guest tonight is a dear friend, Steve Finlan, a Ph.D. MTS. He's the pastor of the First Church of Bridgewater, Massachusetts. He has a Ph.D. in Pauline theology from the University of Denham, UK, and taught theology for 14 years at Fordham, Drew, and other universities. He has 10 books and counting right now. The New Salvation Not Purchased, that's 220. He also has the highly acclaimed Problems with Atonement, that's 2005. Bullying in the Church, I love the title, and that's 2015. Also, The Family Metaphor in Jesus Teaching, that's 2013. He also co-edited the groundbreaking thesis, Deification in Christian Theology. That's 2006. So the man has been quite busy writing. Now, his most recent book, The Drama of Job, Burning Questions and Incomplete Answers. I love the title again. That's Cascade Books. Digs into the burning question of suffering, justice, and mercy in the book of Job. Uh, one of its features is a sympathetic exploration of the theology of mercy. We've got a lot to talk about. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Wonderful to
Yeah.
have you here.
Yeah. So Job may not be a book that people talk about as much anymore. It focuses on suffering and on whether God is just or not. And so it's a little bit of a painful book in some ways, but I find it a really wonderful book. It's a comes across to me as a stage play because it's almost all dialogue, at least in the middle chapters, the majority of the chapters of the book. It's debates, fierce debates about God. So I don't know how familiar all your people are with the plot. I'll give a really simple summary of it. Uh, Job is is a righteous man who's wealthy and healthy and has a big family and lots of animals. It's a sort of rural setting. Wealth is measured by how many animals he has. And then there's a bet between God and the Satan. And the Satan says, look, he's only pious because you've rewarded him with an easy life. If you take that stuff away from him, he won't be pious anymore. And so God enters into the bet with Satan and slams Job with uh, disasters left and right. His children are slaughtered, his animals are stolen, and he is afflicted with a disease, a skin disease. And he's sitting by himself moaning when his three friends come by and tell him, oh, you're suffering because you did something wrong. You know, no one who's innocent suffers. Suffering is a punishment from God, and so you've obviously sinned against God. And Job argues with them and says, "But I haven't sinned against God. Why is God picking on me in effect?" Uh, so he's he's suffering and he's debating with God, but he's also calling upon God to defend him and acquit him as though he were on trial and he wants an acquittal. So he debates with God, he yells at God, he complains to God, and he appeals to God as well. And the reader, I think, almost always is going to pretty much sympathize with Job and not with the three so-called friends. They're very self-righteous and very conformist to the religious views of their day. Then a surprise character shows up who nobody else really notices very much, but he charges in. His name is Elihu, and he criticizes everybody, and he says, You three men have not justified your rebuke of Job, but Job, you're wrong when you complain to God and complain about God." And so Elihu, to me, he comes across sort of like a door-to-door evangelist. He's very sincere and a little bit simple in a way, but he's very positive in his message. I think there's a lot of mercy and compassion that he keeps pushing Job to believe that God sets out to rescue people. He says this numerous times that even if you're suffering, God usually uses suffering to reach people and tries to reach people through their dreams and other ways. Now, scholars down through the ages have tended to hate Elihu because they think he's taking the side of the three friends when he's not really. He comes across a little pompous and self-righteous, though, and scholars hate him for that reason. But I think you have to look past his pomposity and listen to the content of his teachings, and his teachings are very rewarding. And I deal with that. I go chapter by chapter through the book. Probably before I talked about Elihu, I should have told you some things that Job says during the debates before Elihu shows up. He mostly accepts this very gloomy concept of the afterlife that the three friends push, which is whoever dies goes down and lies in the dust, and your food is dust, and your drink is clay, and there's no rising from the dust, and there's no joy there. And Job accepts this because this is the afterlife belief that they had at this very, very early period in Jewish history. Comes from Mesopotamia, a very depressing afterlife idea. Job's inner struggle causes him to rebel against this idea on a couple of occasions. He speaks up, and on one occasion he says, look, God will want to see the work of his hands. He will raise me up. And but he sort of doesn't hold on to that faith. After 2 or 3 verses of saying that, he goes back to being depressed and sort of accepting the gloomy afterlife idea. Then in chapter 19, he rises up and fights even harder, and says, I know that my Redeemer liveth, and that even after my flesh is destroyed, I shall see God with my own eyes. So that seems to me like a very strong affirmation of belief in an afterlife different from the gloomy one. And so you have these two dramatically inspired moments when Job asserts a belief in the afterlife. So as I look at the whole book, I look at it very much as an attempt to answer the problem of evil. And I find that, should I just keep talking, or do you want to ask any questions?
The whole concept of God-fearing, when I hear someone say, I am a God-fearing person, and I'm thinking, I'm a God-loving person.
Yeah.
And it to be honest, Stephen, it bothers me a little bit when that concept of fearing God.
Well,
Do
that's a
you
very
ever feel that?
primitive idea. It goes way back in time. Now, as it comes down to us, the meaning gets changed, and fearing comes to mean revering and respecting. But in its oldest meaning, it really did mean fearing God and being afraid that he was going to blast you. Job is written in a period where some people are holding on to the fear, and some people are trying to move forward toward a more heartfelt and trusting relationship with God. They haven't really had the confidence to assert that very strongly. And so I think Job's 2 assertions of belief in the afterlife and Elihu's sermon on God's mercy go against that idea of being terrified of God. Um, I do have a list, if I could go through it, of what answers I think occur in the book of Job to the problem of evil. I find there are 6 answers given by different characters, and they aren't all consistent. Answer 1 is God only punishes those who deserve it, and that if you're suffering, you're being punished and you deserve it. That's the answer of the 3 so-called friends. Cold comfort, those friends. Answer number 2 is one of Job's answers. It's that God is arbitrary and unfair and just punishes everybody, or lets them suffer and doesn't give a damn. And Job, that's what he says when he's most depressed. And Elihu criticizes that belief strongly. Answer 3 is that God will vindicate the just in the end. And many of the characters in the book say that in one form or another, that the just will be lifted up in the end. You may not be lifted up now, but you will be. As I say, all these answers are less than fully satisfying, but there's some value in most of these answers, not the first one. I don't think, but this one anyway. Well, not the first two; they're both pretty negative. But that you'll be vindicated in the end is partly satisfying answer. Answer 4 is there is an afterlife where the just will be rewarded and where people will get to have their questions answered and will not be abandoned spiritually. So that's a pretty good one. Answer 5 is that God uses afflictions along with dreams and revelations to reach people. That's Elihu's message. And answer 6 is that what you really need is not intellectual answers, but a spiritual encounter. And so some people like the ending of Job, which I never liked. At the ending of Job, Yahweh comes in and yells at everybody, mostly yells at Job and tells him, who the heck are you to be asking these questions? Very unsatisfying. But some people say, look, Job got his relationship that he was hungering for. God showed up and resumed a relationship with Job, and that's what he needed more than intellectual answers to the problem of evil. Because you'll never get fully satisfying intellectual answers to the problem of evil. It's more a matter of finding spiritual solutions rather than intellectual solutions. So I find the book useful, even though no one of those 6 answers is fully satisfactory. But if you look at the book in its total and you see what the author is reaching for, the authors, there's probably more than one author, what they're reaching for, then you see something good. Because often what we're reaching for is more important than what we've actually grasped. Because our reach will exceed our grasp. I mean, our aspiration will exceed our grasp. And both Job and Elihu have very high aspirations, and they come through. And so those are the things I focus on.
It's an incredibly instructive story. It's so powerful. I remember even in catechism class when we were going through that, and this particular story was just uh, so powerful and in a little ways disturbing. I have to honestly say
Oh, yeah.
disturbing because the punishment that this man had received with the huge amount of livestock, his family, his dear loving family, his health, all of those things are taken away from him.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, oh my God, how could he even survive? And with all of that, he doesn't deny uh, his punishment. He says, if that's what God wants me to do, okay, I I I will do that. I will do that because I love God. And it's an incredible story. It really is. It's one of the most powerful stories that I remember from my early catechism class.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can see why you would zero in on that for sure.
Yeah. Well, people still wrestle with this. Many people give this as the reason they stopped believing in God because of the evil they see. And so it raises a big philosophic question. And part of what I address at the end of the book, after I have gone through chapter by chapter, are these philosophic questions. And one of the answers is that this suffering comes with life on this level. It's built into the material life. Uh, it's not punishment. It's sometimes chance, and it's just the conditions of life here. But what's really important is that this is the veil of soul making, to use a phrase from John Keats. It's the place where our souls are going to grow if we let it happen. Uh, I often talk about if you're going to talk to God or argue with God, the most important thing is your sincerity. If you are sincerely seeking answers and not just complaining about not having the answers, you're more likely to get some answers. You're more likely to get the relationship too. which is what really matters, the relationship with God. So it is a big subject, and it is a less than fully satisfying book of the Bible, but I think it's meant to get you started, get your mind working. And uh, at the end of this book, I actually have a stage play that I wrote. Actually, I wrote that before I ever wrote the book. I wrote that 50 years ago.
I was going to ask you about that because I
Yeah.
did see that, and wanted to ask you more about that.
Yeah, so I wrote a stage play. It's got a little bit of humor in it because we have to make fun of the three friends. But it also has Elihu out arguing Yahweh because Yahweh in the book of Job is not the most advanced idea in the book. Elihu's ideas are more advanced. So I have Elihu argue Yahweh into uh, argue him off the stage in effect, um, by putting an emphasis on a better idea of God than Yahweh himself presents at the end of the book, where Yahweh just mostly rebukes Job and but then gives him all his money back and gives him a new wife, and or not a new wife, but new children. Uh, which is less than satisfying too. It's implausible, and it's, what about the innocent family that died? There's no answer given. Um, for myself, I need the afterlife answer very strongly. Um, and there's one point in the book where I say I probably won't ever be satisfied until I meet somebody who was killed in the Holocaust, a child who died in the Holocaust, and who then lives a spiritually satisfying life in the afterlife and is making spiritual progress. And I think love and relationships are very important in the afterlife as they are here, but they come to fruition more fully. And until I see that, I probably myself will still have some grumbling questions.
It's you're really touching some interesting points here. I had I was going to the Catholic cathedral in Boston when I was going to art school, Massachusetts College of Art and Design, and I was living on Mission Hill, and I wanted to receive communion on Easter Sunday. So I decided to go to confession. And you go into that dark box, and the priest is on the other side of the screen. And Father, bless me, Father, I've committed some sins, and these are my sins. And then I stopped, and I thought, I really don't have any. I couldn't think of, Stephen, I couldn't think of anything that I had done in that last month that really was a sin. There
Yeah.
really wasn't anything on my slate. And after a while, I said, Father, to be quite honest with you, I can't think of anything to confess. And there was this long silence. And he said, all right, then. I still want you to say 20 Hail Marys and like 20 Our Fathers and God bless you, and close the little slide. And
Yeah.
it was just like one of those moments when I thought, I really honestly didn't have anything to confess. It was kind of a funny situation to be
Yeah.
dressed up and no place to go, sort of. I wanted to share that with you, Stephen. And the
Yeah.
other thing I wanted to mention too, and this is personal to me, is that as a young man, when you think that your friends will be there all of your life, they will be there, we'll grow old together. And then my friends were getting cancer, they were getting AIDS, some of them, and they were dying. And I was going to funerals. And it really just pushed every button I had to stay afloat. And it was, I've got to get answers. I've got to get more because I just can't go on like this. That really, I think, does spark a huge amount of questions. You got to ask these questions. You got to get answers, and you look for sourcing to do that. I'm sure that's
Yeah.
affected you when you lost your loved ones too. And when I was a kid, I honestly can remember, Stephen, that the first time I heard the word death. And I asked, what is that? As a kid, tiny kid, and they told me that, well, the people will die. I said, my loved ones, my mother, my father, my sister, all my, well, at one point you will die, you will pass on. And that really bothered me a great deal because it was the first time I ever experienced the idea that this wasn't forever. Have you ever had any people speak about that to you?
Not when I was young, no. It took a while before I experienced death among people I knew. Now I experience it more often. I'm the pastor of a church, and as with many churches, most members are pretty old. And we lost about 12 people one year, and they're still dying and getting sick, getting cancer, and it's heartbreaking. Um, when we do chaplaincy, that's part of the training for ministry is you have to at least do one school year of chaplaincy. They taught us that pretty much the best thing you can do is be a listener. If you're say in a hospital room with someone with cancer, you can't bring a canned speech. You can't bring a list of answers, even the 6 answers I had there. You mostly have to bring yourself and be a good listener, be a compassionate listener, and let them say what they need to say. Because sometimes they want to tell you their life story, or sometimes they want to tell you what their family problems are and who's visiting from the family that they're grateful for and who's not visiting that hurts their feelings. They want to tell you whatever's on their mind. And so we try to be a good listener. You don't always get answers in a verbal or intellectually satisfying way. Sometimes the answer is the warmth of human contact, you know. One of the articles I read in preparation for writing the book was an article, I can't remember the author's name now, but she would visit with victims of sexual violence and they would become allies. And they also couldn't answer the question, why did this happen to me? Because there's no answer to that really. But what they did is became strong allies of each other. And that was an answer. A partial answer, maybe it's another incomplete answer, but it's a pretty good one. If you have a strong ally and friend, and then you have a few more strong allies and friends, that really helps.
It absolutely does. And I think what you just made the point of being there when someone needs someone and to listen and to perhaps comment and give them the comfort that their thoughts are being received. And that's very important. That's certainly such a beautiful thing to do. One time, my best friend uh, uh, couldn't be closer to him, and a young guy in his early 30s, and he got AIDS, and it was very quick that he was getting sicker and sicker, and he was he lived in Manhattan, and he went into the big hospital on the west side. I think it was like on 14th, on like 12th Street. It's no longer there, but it was a hospital there. And um, we all thought that he had many, many months to live, but he didn't. He went very quickly, very, very quickly, surprisingly so. And his parents called me and they said, Nick, we're here with Bob. And we think that he's hitting a very bad time here. He's getting weaker by the second. He hasn't opened his eyes. And we're here with his two sisters. Please come. I said, I'll be right there. Of course I will. So I did. And the moral of the story here is that when I got there, I didn't know if he knew I was there. I went over to him and said, Hi, Bob, it's Nick. How much I love you. I'm here for you. and his parents were on either side of him holding his hand, and his sisters were a little bit, tiny bit further away, and I was maybe about 15 feet away because I wanted the family to be together. So I
Yeah.
just was a little bit less. And here's what happened. Um, he passed on right there. A surprise to everyone. He just simply let go. And at that moment, I was looking at him when it happened, and what I saw was a light flash, a white flash of light that came from him. It was right where he was, and it went up, and it was like, woof, like really quickly. And all I could feel was joy. I felt as though he had left his diseased body and he was free. Now, his family, I asked them later, and they didn't see anything like that. But I'm telling you, Stephen, I saw that happen. And it was because otherwise I would have been out of my mind crying, of course, to lose someone so wonderful. But I felt the joy that he had left, and he
Yeah.
was on to bigger and better things. That's a true
Sure.
story. I want to share that with you.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope they felt a tiny bit of that. Maybe not the same day. Maybe after hearing your experience, maybe they opened their hearts a little bit to the idea that he did go to a better place.
I just felt so strongly that it just took the sorrow that was certainly going to be huge, and I felt the joy that he had gone on, and he
Yeah.
was happy, and that really was how I was feeling.
Yeah.
Again, I wasn't. Who could prepare for something like that? But
Yeah.
I know what I saw and felt. So anyhow, I
Yeah.
wanted to share that. But
Yeah.
losing someone, especially close to you, someone that you love and always will love forever, because I do believe that love is forever,
Yeah.
um, is always uh, a challenge. It certainly is. And a lot of people turn to religion and turn to the Bible or the Urantia book or whatever sourcing they have to try to find the answers and to try to understand what's happening to their lives and the lives of the people that they love.
Yeah. Yeah. So Paul writes about us getting a new spiritual body. He actually uses that word, pneumatikos soma, a spiritual body, and says that it is incorruptible and it is of the stuff of heaven. So what we have now is corruptible, it's of the stuff of earth, is vulnerable to diseases and accidents. And the nature of the body up there, which is not a physical body, is that it is not subject to disease and, as far as I know, to accidents. Um, so it's a very different life. It doesn't mean you're transformed into permanent bliss. I think progress and growth are going to be always the name of the game. We will be growing, but we will be loving and we will be meeting people, all kinds of people. And it's an expansion of the life we have here, but without disease and without war.
Can you imagine seeing Jesus? Can you? It's like I think about that sometimes of being there and seeing Jesus. It's just like one of those things that words fail me
Yeah.
to think that you'd be in the presence of him.
Well, I need to be more receptive probably before I'm ready to meet him, you know. Uh, although the people he met here when he was in his earth life were just ordinary people, none of them had reached a state of perfection. But I guess just for myself, I feel like I need to make more progress before
Well,
I'm ready to meet him, you know.
well, welcome to the club. You're not
Yeah,
alone, my friend. You are
yeah,
not alone on that at all, at all.
yeah,
I want to ask you if I could go back a little bit. Um, where were you born, Stephen?
Rochester, New York.
Okay,
I
and did
was
you
raised
come?
Catholic too.
Oh, okay. And did you
Yeah,
have brothers and sisters, or were the only
one
child?
of each, one of each. Yeah, and mom and dad were fairly pious, but they didn't talk about it much. My dad's the one who grew up Catholic. My mom had to become Catholic to marry him back in those days. But
What was she when she grew up? Did she have
I think
a?
she was some kind of a lukewarm Lutheran.
Okay.
They weren't very religious, but the Catholic side was of my family, my father's side was fairly religious. And then my mom became religious. Uh, so I grew up with Catholicism, but boy, it was not very satisfying. It was very stern. The Second Vatican Council hadn't trickled down to the denominational level, to the congregational level. So everybody was stern and strict and sometimes physically violent. And catechism was less than satisfying. I mean, I tried to be an honest Catholic, but by the time I was about 10, well, I don't remember the age actually. It might have been older, more like 12 or 13. I had become an agnostic and stayed an agnostic and then sort of got a little bit spiritual in the 70s and then had a born again experience and went to churches. And then not long after that, I also found the URANTIA book. And that changed my perspective to I guess this current understanding I have that God does love us and that the universe is a great big university or it's a great big school uh,
Hmm. Hmm.
for social universe, not just the intellectual stuff, but socializing. You know, we're really going to socialize like mad, I think. And
Yeah, boy, it made a big
we'll
difference to me too. The Urantia book, and I studied the Bible, of course, when I was going to school and all that. I remember that the nuns, I didn't go to parochial school, but when I went to catechism and so forth, there were nuns, and they had rulers,
yes,
and if somebody was bad, they got hit.
yeah,
They got hit hard.
yeah,
I think of that now. Can you imagine that happening now? Oh my!
yeah, yeah. It would be a
But
scandal.
it would be it.
Hopefully,
Oh
it would
boy.
be a scandal. Yeah,
It would certainly be that, but
yeah,
I do remember that very, very clearly. I also remember that the sisters were actually wonderful, fun people. They weren't stern at all. I liked them, and my aunt was funny, and I loved being with her. She was really very down to earth, and she couldn't have been more than 5 foot tall on the Italian side of my family. And she had an incredible spirit, like a real energy going. And just be in the room with her, you could see the energy just pouring off of her. And this little woman ended up, she had to run away from home because my grandfather wouldn't let her become a nun. So
no,
she ran away from home when she was, I don't know, 15, 16, something like that, and she became a sister superior, and her whole life, her whole career was they sent her to various orders to be the sister superior.
yeah,
In other words, running the nuns' home and the school because they all were school teachers too. So
yeah,
that was my background. So it was very interesting to be in that sort of an environment.
yeah. I only had 2 years in Catholic school, first and second grade. I had a mean nun and a wonderful nun that I fell in love with.
Oh, one of
Uh,
each.
and then we moved again. My dad moved a lot. We moved to Santa Maria, and suddenly we went to public schools. Very different. Um, but yeah, I had my period of agnosticism and borderline atheism, but never. I was atheism is just not satisfying intellectually. You know, it doesn't really answer any questions about how this extraordinary complex being, the human being, came into existence. Um, but anyway, I did go to I had a born again experience and went to several churches, Baptist churches and others, before I found the Ranch book. Now, the Urantia book has actually sort of helped me. Most of my writing it doesn't ever quote the Urantia book. I am writing in a scholarly setting, and I play by the same rules pretty much that everybody else plays by. But of course, my insights are greatly enhanced by the Urantia book. In fact, the Urantia book drew attention to Elihu in the couple of times that it talks about the book of Job. It quotes Elihu and brings out the interesting theology that he brought forward about God's mercy. So that it was actually the Ranch book that sort of clued me to reread the book and really pay attention to Elihu. And so that often happens with me. I get some guidance from the Ranch book, but I do the research the same way all other people do.
Of
Yeah,
course.
yeah,
It is it's a wonderful sourcing. I compare. I have to say now this is personal, but I compare the Bible and the Urantia book because I was teaching. I've been studying the Bible for when especially when I was growing up. But to me, um, the Bible is like a black and white, small screen, silent movie. And the Urantia book expands that so much to Jesus' life, especially part four, the life and teachings of Jesus. It becomes a 3D, high definition, stereophonic sound version of what I
color.
was learning when I was a kid with the Bible. In other words, it expands it so much that you feel so much more. You've got so many more facts to look at and to think about. It's just expansive. That's the word I like to use here.
Yeah.
And I
Well, the
think that
Bible is very much like an artifact. When they dig archaeologically, they go through layers and they encounter layers and they encounter deeper and deeper and older civilizations. And the Bible is a little bit like that. It has lots of layers, some of which are very old. The book of Job, I think, in its original form, is one of the oldest books in the Bible.
yeah,
Then,
I read that just recently that that's
yeah,
true. That yeah,
it then seems to get rewritten. The form we have it in now, and it's almost impossible to put a date on when it was rewritten. But it seems to be heavily reworked and rewritten. So once again, it has more than one author. Uh, Elihu himself, I agree with the scholar Carol Newsom, who says Elihu was a reader of the book of Job, the form that it used to exist in. He read it and was so unsatisfied and so worked up about what they left out that he wrote himself into the book, and tradition accepted what he added to the book. One reason to believe that is that none of the characters react to him at all. He gives a what is it, 8 chapters or 7 chapters of lecture, and nobody responds. Nobody says you're wrong, Elihu, or well, that's nice. Go sit over there. They don't even notice him, and Yahweh doesn't notice him. So that looks like someone writing themselves into the book, adding those
interesting,
chapters.
very interesting.
Yeah.
Oh
So, oh,
boy,
I guess the point I was making is that the Bible has many layers. So a lot of what it is the historical reception of reflection about God, starting with the time of Abraham and coming down through, and then it has the remarkable life and teachings of Jesus in 4 short books, uh, and then reflection about the Jesus revelation, which is the epistles and Revelation. So it's a very human document. The Ranch book is very different. It's not something that's been excavated from human history. It's something that purports to be a revelation from higher personalities. So it's not actually entirely fair to compare the two, although you can't help but compare them when you are looking for answers and you find uh, different sets of answers in these two books.
absolutely true. It's It really has helped my life. On the same program, the Urantia book with Nick Curto, a few years ago, I was interviewing this wonderful woman, and I asked her what the Urantia book has meant to her life, which is one of the standard questions I ask because everyone has their own answer. And she said, "It saved my life." And I said, "Tell me more." And she says, at one part of my life, I was so depressed, I was suicidal. And I was really thinking that maybe that's the answer, to just end it all. And somehow, I don't know how the Rancher book came into her life, if a friend or how she discovered it, but she did. And she said, it literally saved me. It brought me back,
Yeah.
gave me hope and love. And
Yeah.
wow, I mean, I didn't have words at that moment because I didn't know she was going to say that. And
Yeah.
I was totally taken with her wonderful sharing of honesty about that. Another thing too that I wanted to just go with you about is how many atheists, and that's really quite a decision when you think, okay, I've looked at things, I've looked at other spiritual callings, and nothing seems right for me. So I'm just going to pass. And then somehow they get a hold of the Urantia book, or it gets a hold of them, and now they're Urantia book readers. And I met a number of people that were atheists before they found the Urantia book. How interesting is that?
Yeah. Seems unlikely, at least from my standpoint, but that's remarkable.
It is. I was
Yeah.
quite taken when and a number of people have said to me that that was where they were in their lives, and
Yeah.
before they found, or it found it, they found the Rancher book, or the Rancher book found them, and then things changed.
Yeah.
That's a huge change.
Yeah. Well, it not only offers a lot of spiritual nourishment, it offers a lot of intellectual structure.
You know,
Um, that's beyond what we can cover in today's discussion, but it brings a boatload of hope. You mentioned hope. I mean, it comes like an arc of hope crashing into you.
absolutely true.
Yeah.
The sense of hope and love, because it seems like every page of that book, I'm feeling love and the caring. It's just there.
Yeah.
And it's you can't deny it. It's just there. And who doesn't need that in their lives? We all do. Every one of us needs that.
Yeah.
And it's plentiful. And I was just startled that every page has that. And again, the fourth part of the book is my favorite part. It's the life and teachings of Jesus. And you really feel as though you're right there with them. And you're hearing this for the first time. And he's talking to the apostles and others, and you're witnessing it. It's like a witnessing thing that I never felt until I got the Urantia book. And it's powerful stuff, really is. And, in study groups, I've been in a couple of study groups, wonderful people that run the study groups. Uh, and there are times when we're reading and we have to stop and just take a moment of quietness because your heart is just filled with love. And people feel that like there might be 10 or 20 people in the room, and we need to stop and kind of digest what we just read. And there are also times when people have cried out loud because of what we were reading, and it meant so much to them.
Yeah.
So it's very powerful.
I want to also make a plug for Christians who are reasserting a belief in a God of love.
Yeah,
This is one author, Sharon Baker Putt. It's Sharon Baker here, but she got married. Executing God, rethinking everything you've been taught about salvation and the cross. And she's not the only one. There are a lot of, well, I don't know about a lot. I guess there are about a dozen authors out there right now putting a big emphasis on the God of love and rejecting the idea that God required a payment and that the death of Jesus was a blood payment for the sins of all humanity. So, yeah, there are a number of people writing and pushing back against that doctrine, at least.
Stephen, I want to just ask you right now that sometime in the fall, I would like to have you back because there's some other subjects I would love to put on
Yeah,
the table for you to comment on. So,
yeah,
um, well, if I will give you some dates and see if your schedule can permit it because I would love to do a part two with you. Now, let me
okay.
ask you this. For people, I've mentioned some of the books that you have. I counted, was it 10 or 12 um, Amazon
11,
on the Amazon website.
11 now.
Oh, good for you, man.
Yeah.
And t tell the audience how they can get a hold of your books. What
Oh, well,
when?
you can just go to Amazon. All my books are on Amazon. And I have an author's page. You can, if you get one of my books, I think you click on my name and then it takes you to the author's page. It'll list all the books. This is The Drama of Job,
Ah, there it is.
a sad and striking cover.
Yeah.
Uh, but they're usually short books, um, most of them. And yeah, I address quite a few subjects, including theosis. Um,
Now, what are you working on now, may I ask?
I'm working on a book on personalism. Now, personalism is not the same as individualism, but it does say there is great spiritual value in the individual person. And not only great value, but you can't really understand the universe without putting personality at the center of it. So that's a philosophy that's emerged uh, both in the East and the West. Its strongest manifestation was at Boston University. It was called Boston Personalism. Borden Parker Bown and other authors, and then eventually Martin Luther King, who went to Boston University. That's one personalist school. I am drawing attention to the Russian personalists, especially Nicholas Berdyaev, but there are others. So it's a religious philosophy. Almost always has a belief in God. There are a few personalist philosophies where they say God is a force but not a person, but most personalists won't say that because it sort of undermines your own argument of the centrality of personality.
Right, right,
So
right.
they tend to be religious philosophers, and so
Sure.
I'm going to survey a lot of them. More than putting a whole lot of my ideas in there, I'm going to cherry pick the best and look at what they say.
Right, right, right.
Yeah,
Looks like we're out of time. Stephen, thank you
yeah.
so much for a wonderful program. I really, really appreciate your being here, and I look forward to a part two.
Okay.
So
Well,
this
thank
is
you
Nick
so much.
Curto. I'd like to just say that if you'd like to know more about the Urantia book, the website www.urantia
Okay.
urantia book.org. That will get you the fellowship website. It's incredible. So again, thank you, Stephen, and uh,
Yeah.
my wonderful producer Hercules. We're going to turn it back to you, my friend.
Yeah. Hercules the host.
And thank you both for an excellent, thoughtful, and informative program.
All right.
Absolutely.
We'll
Take
do it
good care.
again.
Much love to all, everywhere, everywhere.
Yes. God's love be on everybody. We
What they
wish.
said. Take care. Thank
Okay.